This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. My name is Emily Harper, and I'm 19 years old, a small-town girl with a sharp mind and a heart that's been cracked open too many times to count. I've always been the kind of person who keeps going, even when the world feels like it's crumbling under my feet. I graduated high school last year with decent grades, thanks to a stubborn streak and a love for books, and now I'm juggling college classes on a scholarship while pouring coffee at a local diner to make ends meet. I've got dark hair that falls past my shoulders, tired green eyes that have seen too much, and a quiet strength I didn't know I had until life forced me to find it. I used to think family was everything, but that illusion shattered a year ago when my own mother and stepfather threw me out like yesterday's trash. This is my story, messy, raw, and full of twists I never saw coming. It's a cold December night in 2024, just 2 days before finals week, and I'm sitting on my bed, surrounded by textbooks and flashcards, my stomach knotted with stress. The room is dimly lit by a flickering desk lamp, casting long shadows across the faded blue walls. I've called mine since I was a kid. My algebra notes are sprawled out, equations blurring as my tired eyes strain to focus. I've been up for hours, fueled by cheap coffee and the quiet panic of needing to ace these tests to secure my scholarship. The house is silent except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floors, until the door bangs open, jolting me out of my thoughts. There's Sasha, my half-sister, standing there with her swollen belly, her blonde hair pulled back tight in a messy bun, and a smug look on her face that makes my skin crawl. She's wearing an oversized sweater that doesn't quite hide the curve of her pregnancy, and her sharp blue eyes glint with something mean. Behind her, my mom, Laura, shifts uncomfortably, her brown eyes darting to the floor, her hands twisting the hem of her worn cardigan. Jacob, my stepfather, looms like a shadow in the doorway, his broad frame filling the space, his jaw set hard under a scruffy beard. His graying hair is messy, and I catch the faint sour whiff of beer on his breath as he leans against the frame. "Emily, we need to talk," Sasha says, her voice dripping with entitlement, like she's announcing a royal decree. She crosses her arms over her chest, tilting her head as if daring me to argue. "I'm moving back in. I need your room for the baby." I blink, my pen frozen mid-sentence, ink bleeding into the paper where it's pressed too hard. My heart skips, and a hot flush of disbelief creeps up my neck. "You have an apartment," I snap, my voice shaking despite my effort to keep it steady. "You and Derek have a whole place 10 minutes away. Why do I have to give up my space?" Jacob steps forward, his heavy boots thudding on the floor, his presence sucking the air out of the room. "This is my house," he growls, his voice low and rough, like gravel crunching under tires. "My daughter needs it. You're 18 now. Figure it out." His eyes are bloodshot, and I can see the tension in his shoulders. He's itching for a fight like always. My chest tightens, a sharp ache spreading as I turn to Mom, waiting for her to say something, anything, to stop this madness. She's my last hope, the one person who's supposed to have my back. But she just stands there, wringing her hands, her dark hair falling into her face as she mumbles, "It's only for a little while, Emily. Sasha needs us now." Her voice is soft, almost pleading, but it's hollow. There's no strength behind it. I feel the air sucked out of the room, my heart pounding so loud it drowns out the silence that follows. "You're kicking me out?" I whisper, my throat burning with the effort to hold back tears. "During finals?" Jacob's eyes narrow, his lips curling into a sneer. "Pack your stuff by the end of the week, or I'll toss it myself. No one's stopping me. You're an adult now." His words hit like a punch, and I can't stop myself from firing back. "This is insane," I shout, my voice rising with panic and rage. "I've got exams in 2 days. Where am I supposed to go?" I fling my pen down, standing up so fast my chair screeches against the floor, but it's like screaming into a void. They don't care. Sasha smirks, stepping closer, her belly brushing against my desk. "Don't be so dramatic, Emily. It's not like you're homeless. You've got friends, right?" Her tone is mocking, and I want to scream at her. How she's always treated me like dirt, how she's Jacob's golden child while I'm the stray they tolerate. But before I can, Mom speaks again, and her words cut the deepest. "We need room for our real grandkids." Real grandkids. The phrase stabs me, a knife twisting in my gut, and I freeze, staring at her. Her face flushes, like she knows she's crossed a line, but she doesn't take it back. I realize then, with a sick clarity, that I've never been part of their little circle. Mom, Jacob, and Sasha, the perfect family I was never invited to join. Tears sting my eyes, hot and humiliating, as I turn away and start shoving clothes into a duffel bag. My hands tremble, knocking over a stack of books, and my mind races with nowhere to go. "Fine," I choke out, my voice breaking. "I'm gone." Jacob grunts, satisfied, and Sasha mutters something smug under her breath as they leave. Mom lingers for a second, her mouth opening like she might say more, but then she turns and follows them, her footsteps fading down the hall. I'm alone, the weight of their betrayal crushing me as I zip the bag shut. The night air bites at my face as I stumble down the street, my duffel slung over my shoulder, the weight of it pulling at my already aching body. It's past midnight and the town is asleep. Streetlights buzz faintly, casting yellow pools on the cracked pavement. My breath fogs in the cold, and I can feel the tears freezing on my cheeks. I don't know where I'm going until my feet take me to Lily Carter's house, 3 blocks away. She's been my best friend since we were kids, short, freckled, with a wild laugh that always pulls me out of my gloom. I knock, my knuckles raw against the wooden door, and she opens it, her round face paling when she sees me. "Emily? What happened?" she gasps, her hazel eyes wide as she pulls me inside. The warmth of her house hits me, smelling of cinnamon and laundry detergent, and I drop my bag, my legs shaking. Her parents, Mark and Diane, appear from the living room, Mark in his flannel pajamas, Diane clutching a mug of tea. "They kicked me out," I blurt, my voice cracking as I spill the story. Sasha's pregnancy, Jacob's threats, Mom's betrayal. Diane's face softens with pity, and she sets her mug down, wrapping me in a hug that smells like lavender. "You're staying here," she says firmly, her hands steady on my shoulders. Mark nods, his graying beard framing a kind smile. "As long as you need, kiddo." I'm grateful, but shame gnaws at me. I'm a burden again, a stray they've taken in out of pity. Then Ryan walks in from the garage, Lily's older brother, his hands smudged with grease from whatever car he's been tinkering with. He's 22 now, tall and lean, with messy black hair and hazel eyes that used to light up when he looked at me. We dated last year, a quiet, sweet thing that ended when Jacob called him trailer trash and threatened to run him off with a baseball bat. He freezes when he sees me, his jaw tightening. "They did what?" he says, his voice low and dangerous, like a storm brewing. I repeat the story, my throat raw, and he clenches his fists, the muscles in his arms flexing under his worn jacket. "I told you to get out of there," he mutters, but there's no blame, just a flicker of guilt in his eyes, like he wishes he'd fought harder to pull me away back then. "I'm fine," I lie, sinking onto the couch, exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. Lily sits beside me, squeezing my hand, and Ryan hovers nearby, his presence a quiet comfort I don't deserve but desperately need. That night, I sleep in their spare room, a tiny space with a lumpy mattress and a quilt Diane made, but I can't close my eyes without hearing Mom's voice, real grandkids. It's the moment I know I'm done hoping they'll ever love me. The next morning, I wake to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Lily arguing with Ryan over the last piece of bacon. My head throbs from crying, and my body feels like it's been run over, but I drag myself downstairs. Diane slides a plate in front of me, her smile gentle. "Eat, Emily. You've got exams to tackle." I force a nod, but my stomach churns. How am I supposed to focus when my whole life's been upended? Lily notices, her chatter stopping as she studies me. "You're not okay," she says softly, and I shake my head, pushing the food around my plate. "I just need to get through this week," I mutter, but the words feel empty. Ryan leans against the counter, watching me with that quiet intensity he's always had. "You don't have to do it alone," he says, and there's a promise in his voice that makes my chest ache, not with pain this time, but with something softer, something I'm too scared to name. At school, finals are a blur. I sit in the gym, pencils scratching against paper, my mind half on equations and half on the fact that I'm homeless. Well, technically not, thanks to the Carters, but it feels that way. I spot Derek, Sasha's boyfriend, in the hall between exams. He's a lanky guy with a scruffy beard and a nervous energy, always trailing after Sasha like a lost puppy. He catches my eye and hurries over, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "Hey, Emily," he says, his voice low. "I'm sorry about, I told Sasha we could stay at the apartment, but she wouldn't listen." I stare at him, my anger flaring. "Then why didn't you fight harder?" I snap, and he flinches, looking away. "It's complicated," he mumbles, and I walk off, too tired to care about his excuses. But his words stick with me. Complicated. It's always complicated with them, and I'm always the one paying the price. A new face shows up that day, Mrs. Evelyn Brooks, our nosy neighbor with a penchant for digging up dirt. She's waiting outside the school when I leave, her wiry frame bundled in a thick coat, her sharp gray eyes glinting with something I can't place. "Emily Harper," she calls, waving me over. I hesitate. She's never liked me much, always siding with Jacob, but I walk to her anyway. "Heard about the mess at your place," she says, her voice crisp. "Sasha's not the saint they think she is. Ask her about the kid she gave up 3 years ago." My jaw drops and she smirks, satisfied with my shock. "What kid?" I ask, but she just pats my arm. "Dig around, girl. You'll see." She shuffles off, leaving me reeling. Sasha had a kid before and gave it up? My head spins with questions, but I shove them down. I've got one more exam tomorrow, and I can't fall apart now. That night, I'm back at Lily's, curled up on the couch with a textbook, when Ryan sits beside me. He's showered off the garage grime, his hair damp and curling at the ends, and he smells faintly of soap, a clean, warm scent that cuts through the fog in my head. The living room is cozy, with a worn plaid blanket draped over me and the soft hum of the TV in the background, tuned to some late-night rerun Lily's parents are watching. My algebra book rests heavy on my lap, pages dog-eared and scribbled with notes, but my hands are too shaky to turn them. Ryan notices, his hazel eyes narrowing as he leans closer. "You're pushing too hard," he says, his voice gentle but firm, like he's talking to a spooked animal. "Let me help." I shake my head, stubborn as ever, my pride bristling at the thought of needing anyone. "I've got it," I mutter, but my voice wavers, betraying me. He doesn't budge, just reaches over and takes the book from my hands, his fingers brushing mine, rough from work, but careful. "I'm not asking," he says, a faint smirk tugging at his lips, and he flips to the chapter I've been struggling with, quizzing me on formulas until my eyes droop. His voice is steady, patient, cutting through the chaos in my mind, and for the first time in days, I feel a flicker of safety, his presence anchoring me like a lifeline in a storm. But as I drift off, Mrs. Brooks's words echo, Sasha's secret, Jacob's lies, Mom's silence, and they twist into my dreams, dark and restless. I don't know it yet, but this is just the beginning of the storm. The next morning, I wake to the sound of rain drumming against the windows, a gray December drizzle that matches the heaviness in my chest. My body aches from sleeping on the couch, my neck stiff, but I force myself up, driven by the ticking clock. My last final is in 3 hours. Lily's already in the kitchen, her wild curls tied back, flipping pancakes with a grin. "Morning, zombie," she teases, sliding a plate toward me. Her cheerfulness feels like a lifeline, but I can barely muster a smile. "Thanks," I mumble, poking at the food as Diane shuffles in, her bathrobe tied loose. "You've got this, Emily," she says, squeezing my shoulder, and I nod, though doubt gnaws at me. Ryan's gone, off to the garage for an early shift, but his jacket still hangs by the door, a silent reminder of last night. I eat in silence, my mind replaying Mrs. Brooks's bombshell. A kid Sasha gave up? It's too wild to believe, but the seed of curiosity sprouts, tangling with my anger. At school, the gym is a chaos of nervous energy, students hunched over desks, pencils scratching, the air thick with sweat and tension. I finish my exam in a daze, my brain on autopilot, and stumble into the hall, relieved but drained. That's when I see Derek again, Sasha's boyfriend, lingering near the vending machines. His lanky frame slouches, his scruffy beard patchy, and his brown eyes dart around like he's hiding something. He spots me and jogs over, his sneakers squeaking on the tile. "Emily, hey," he says, his voice hushed. I feel awful about this. I told Sasha we could stay at the apartment, but she and Jacob, they wouldn't listen. I stare at him, my anger flaring hot and sudden. "Then why didn't you fight harder?" I snap, my hands balling into fists. He flinches, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. "It's complicated. He's got a hold on her, on all of us." His words hang there, vague and frustrating, and I turn away, too exhausted to press him. But as I walk off, I catch him muttering, "Just be careful," and it sends a shiver down my spine. Outside, the rain's picked up, soaking my hoodie as I head to the bus stop. That's when Mrs. Evelyn Brooks appears again, her wiry frame hunched under a black umbrella, her sharp gray eyes glinting like she's been waiting for me. "Emily Harper," she calls, her voice cutting through the downpour. I sigh, trudging over. She's a pest, but she's got my attention now. "What do you want?" I ask, my tone sharp. She smirks, unfazed. "Told you about Sasha's kid, didn't I? 3 years ago she got pregnant. Some guy from out of town. Jacob made her give it up, said it'd ruin her future." My jaw drops, rain dripping off my hood as I process her words. "You're serious?" I choke out, and she nods, smug. "Ask Derek. He knows more than he lets on. And Jacob? He's in deeper than you think. Gambling debts, bad people. Watch yourself, girl." She pats my arm and shuffles off, leaving me stunned, the rain plastering my hair to my face. My mind races. Sasha's secret, Jacob's debts. It's a puzzle I don't want to solve, but I can't ignore it. Back at Lily's, I'm dripping wet, my sneakers squeaking as I peel off my soaked clothes in the bathroom. Lily's waiting with a towel, her brow furrowed. "You look like hell," she says, and I laugh, a brittle sound. "Feel like it too." I tell her about Mrs. Brooks, and her eyes widen. "Sasha had a kid? That's insane. What are you gonna do?" I shrug, wrapping the towel around me. "Nothing yet. I just need to breathe." But the truth is, I'm burning with questions, and they're eating me alive. Ryan gets home later, his boots muddy, and finds me pacing the living room. "What's wrong?" he asks, dropping his keys on the table. I spill everything. Mrs. Brooks, Derek's warning, the mess in my head. He listens, his face darkening, and when I'm done, he runs a hand through his hair. "Jacob's always been trouble. I heard stuff at the garage, guys saying he owes money to some rough types. You need to stay clear of them, Emily." His worry is real, and it hooks into me, pulling me closer to him. "I'm trying," I say, my voice small, and he steps forward, hesitating before resting a hand on my arm. "I've got your back," he says, and I believe him. The next few days blur together. I crash at Lily's, dodging calls from Mom that start trickling in, her voice too chipper on the voicemails. "Emily, sweetie, call me back." I delete them, my gut screaming she's up to something. Then, a week after finals, a new player steps in, Jake Morris, a scruffy guy in his late 20s who works with Ryan at the garage. He's got a buzz cut, a chipped tooth, and a loud laugh that fills the room when he drops by one night with a six-pack. "Heard you're the girl with the crazy family," he says, cracking a beer and handing it to me. I take it, wary. "Something like that." He grins, leaning back on the couch. "Knew your stepdad back in the day. Guy's a train wreck, used to bet on anything that moved. Owed my cousin $1,000 once, skipped town to dodge it." I sit up straighter, the beer cold against my palm. "He's still like that?" Jake nods, his grin fading. "Worse. Word is he's tangled with some guys from Miller's crew, loan sharks. They don't mess around." My stomach drops, Mrs. Brooks's warning echoing louder now. Ryan shoots Jake a look, like he said too much, but I press him. "What about Sasha?" Jake shrugs. "Dunno. But if she's tied to him, she's in it too." The room feels smaller, the walls closing in as I piece it together. Jacob's debts, Sasha's secrets, Mom's sudden calls. They're drowning, and I'm the lifeline they're reaching for. That night, I can't sleep, the rain tapping a restless rhythm against the window. I slip out to the porch, the cold biting my bare feet, and Ryan finds me there, his jacket slung over his shoulders. "You're gonna freeze," he says, draping it around me. It's warm, smells like him, and I pull it tight, my breath shaky. I can't stop thinking about it, I admit, staring into the dark. Sasha's kid, Jacob's mess. It's all connected, isn't it? He nods, leaning against the railing. "Probably. But you don't have to fix it, Emily. They made their bed." His words are solid, an anchor in the chaos, and I look at him, really look. His eyes are soft but fierce, and I feel that pull again, the one I buried when we broke up. "Thanks," I whisper, and he smiles, small and real. "Anytime." We stand there, the rain a quiet curtain around us, and I wonder how deep this storm will go. A few days later, a new voice cuts through the haze, Tom Dawson, my grandfather, calling from a number I don't know. I'm at Joe's diner, wiping down tables during a slow shift, when my phone buzzes in the pocket of my faded apron. The diner's quiet, just the hum of the jukebox playing some old country tune and the clink of dishes from the kitchen. My hands are sticky with ketchup from a spilled bottle, and I'm wiping them on a rag when I fish out my phone, expecting Lily or maybe Ryan checking in. Instead, it's an unfamiliar voice, rough but warm, like gravel smoothed by years. "Emily? It's Tom," he says, pausing before adding, "Your mom's dad." I nearly drop the rag, my heart thudding so hard I feel it in my throat. Mom always said her parents ditched her when she got pregnant with Sasha, cut her off cold and left her to fend for herself. It was one of those stories she'd tell with a bitter edge, her eyes distant, and I never questioned it. Why would I? But here he is, alive and talking, his voice steady through the crackling line. "We've been looking for you," he says, and then another voice joins in, Grace, my grandmother, her tone trembling with emotion. "We need to see you, honey." My walls shoot up, skepticism wrapping around me like armor. This could be a scam, a trick, but there's something in Grace's voice, a raw, desperate edge, that makes me pause. They insist on a video call, and I mutter a reluctant, "Okay," hanging up with a promise to talk in an hour when my break starts. The diner feels smaller after that, the air thicker as I finish my shift, my mind spinning. I clock out and duck into the break room, a cramped space with a sagging couch and a flickering fluorescent light. My hands shake as I prop my cracked phone against a stack of napkins and open the video app. When their faces pop up, I freeze. Tom with his stern jaw and gray buzz cut, his blue eyes sharp but softened by age. Grace with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun, her brown eyes so much like Mom's it hurts to look at them. They're in a living room, shelves lined with books and old photos behind them, and they hold up one of those photos. Mom as a kid, maybe 7 or 8, gap-toothed and smiling, her dark hair in pigtails. Tears prick my eyes, hot and sudden, and I blink them back, my throat tight. "She lied to you," Tom says, his tone hard, cutting through the static. "We didn't abandon her. We hated Jacob, addict, liar, trouble. She chose him over us." Grace sobs, her hands trembling as she clutches the photo. "We didn't know about you, Emily. Not until now." My chest cracks open, relief and rage spilling out in a messy flood. Relief that I wasn't the product of some cold, uncaring family line. Rage that Mom buried this truth, leaving me to feel like an outsider my whole life. "They kicked me out for Sasha's baby," I say, my voice breaking as the words tumble out, raw and jagged. "A week ago, during finals, they said they needed room for their real grandkids." Tom's face turns thunderous, his jaw clenching so tight I can see the muscles twitch, while Grace covers her mouth, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "That house is ours," Tom says, his voice low and dangerous. "We bought it for her 6 years ago, hoping she'd come back to us. We can take it back. Your call." The power of that choice hits me like a freight train, and I don't know what to say. Not yet. My head's a mess, and I stammer, "I need time," before ending the call, my hands shaking as I set the phone down. I sit there in the break room, staring at the chipped linoleum floor, my breath shallow. The idea that I could pull the rug out from under Mom, Jacob, and Sasha, it's intoxicating, but it terrifies me too. I've spent my life trying to please them, to fit into their world, and now I hold the power to ruin it. The door creaks open, and Joe, the diner's owner, pokes his head in. He's a gruff guy in his 50s with a salt and pepper beard and a permanent scowl, but he's been good to me, giving me shifts even when I had no experience. "You okay, kid?" he asks, his voice softer than usual. I nod, forcing a smile. "Just family stuff." He grunts, not pressing, and tosses me a soda from the fridge. "Take it easy tonight," he says, then shuffles out. I crack open the can, the cold fizz grounding me as I try to process everything. Tom and Grace, the house, the lies. When I get back to Lily's, the house is warm and loud. Lily's arguing with Ryan over the TV remote, her voice rising over the laugh track of some sitcom. I drop my bag by the door, my sneakers leaving wet prints on the hardwood, and Lily glances over, her freckled face lighting up. "You're back. How was the shift?" she asks, but her smile fades when she sees my expression. "What's wrong?" I collapse onto the couch, the weight of the day pressing down, and spill everything. Tom and Grace, their story, the house. Ryan stops wrestling with the remote, his hazel eyes narrowing as he listens, while Lily's jaw drops. "Your mom lied about her parents? That's messed up," she says, scooting closer. Ryan leans forward, elbows on his knees. "Jacob's bad news. I've heard stuff at the garage. Guys saying he's mixed up with Miller's crew. This fits. I nod, my mind flashing to Jake Morris's warning about Jacob's gambling debts. They want me to decide if they keep the house, I say, my voice small. Lily's eyes widen. You could kick them out? Holy crap, Emily, that's huge. Ryan's quieter, his gaze steady. You don't owe them anything. But be careful. Jacob won't go down easy. His words sink in, a cold knot forming in my stomach. I want revenge, but I'm scared of what it'll cost. The next day, I'm back at the diner, pouring coffee for the morning regulars, when Derek walks in. He's alone, his scruffy beard unkempt, his brown eyes darting around like he's nervous. He slides into a booth and I approach, my tray balanced on my hip. What do you want? I ask, my tone sharp. He flinches, running a hand through his messy hair. I need to talk to you, he says, keeping his voice low. About Sasha. My heart skips, Mrs. Brooks' words echoing, Sasha's secret kid. I sit across from him, my hands clenched under the table. What about her? I press, and he hesitates, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallows. She had a kid before, 3 years ago. Some guy she met at a bar. Jacob flipped out, made her give it up, said it'd ruin her life. I didn't know until after we started dating. I stare at him, my pulse racing. You're serious? He nods, misery etched on his face. I wanted to keep it, but she wouldn't listen. She's not who you think, Emily. I lean back, my mind reeling. Sasha, the golden child, hiding something this big. Why are you telling me now? I ask, and he looks away. Because things are falling apart. Jacob's in deep, owes money to some bad people. They're coming for him, and Sasha's freaking out. I thought you should know. He stands, leaving a crumpled 5 on the table, and walks out, his shoulders hunched. I sit there, stunned, the pieces clicking together. Jacob's debts, Sasha's past, Mom's lies. They're a house of cards, and I'm the one who can knock it down. That night, I'm pacing Lily's living room, my phone buzzing with another call from Mom. I let it go to voicemail, her chipper tone grating through the speaker. Emily, sweetie, we miss you. Call me back, okay? I delete it, my anger simmering. Ryan's there, sprawled on the couch, watching me with that quiet intensity. You're gonna wear a hole in the floor, he says, half teasing, but his eyes are serious. I stop, running a hand through my hair. Derek told me Sasha had a kid she gave up. And Jacob's in debt, bad debt. It's all true. Ryan sits up, his jaw tightening. I knew it. Miller's crew doesn't mess around. If he's in with them, he's screwed. I nod, my mind racing. And Tom and Grace, they can take the house. I could end this. He stands, stepping closer, his hands hovering like he wants to touch me but isn't sure. You don't have to decide now. But whatever you do, I'm here. His voice is steady, a rock in the storm, and I feel that pull again, the one I buried when we broke up. Thanks, I whisper, and he nods, his hand brushing my arm before he pulls back. The next morning, I'm at the diner again, my head still spinning, when Mrs. Brooks walks in. She's in her usual coat, her gray eyes glinting with that sharp curiosity. She slides into a booth, waving me over. Heard your grandparents found you, she says, sipping the coffee I pour. I nod, wary. She's a gossip, but she's been right before. They did. Told me some stuff about Mom and Jacob. She smirks, leaning in. Good, but there's more. Jacob's been seen with Tony Miller's boys, rough types, loan sharks. He's in deep, maybe 50 grand. And Sasha, that kid she gave up, word is the father's looking for her now, some guy from out of state asking around. My stomach drops, a new layer of chaos piling on. The father? I echo, and she nods, satisfied. Yep, tall guy, tattoos. Showed up at the bar last week digging for info. Watch your back, girl. This is getting messy. She pats my hand and leaves, her words ringing in my ears. Sasha's past is catching up, Jacob's drowning, and I'm caught in the middle. That afternoon, I call Tom and Grace back, my hands trembling as I sit on Lily's porch, the cold December air biting my face. I've been thinking, I say when they pick up, their faces filling my screen again. I want to know everything. About Mom, Jacob, all of it. Tom nods, his expression grim. We'll tell you, but it's not pretty. Your mom was married to your dad, Michael. Good man, loved her. She cheated with Jacob, got pregnant with you. Michael wanted you, fought for you, but he died in a car wreck when you were a baby. After that, she ran back to Jacob, and we tried to stop her, gave her the house to start over, but she shut us out. Grace wipes her eyes, her voice breaking. We wanted to meet you, Emily. Jacob wouldn't let us near. My throat tightens, tears spilling over. My dad wanted me. Mom lied about that too. They're in trouble now, I say, my voice steadying. Jacob owes money, Sasha's got secrets. I don't know what to do. Tom's eyes harden. We can help. The house is ours. We can evict them. But we won't unless you say so. I take a deep breath, the weight of it crushing me. I'll think about it, I say, and they nod, their faces etched with hope and pain. After hanging up with Tom and Grace, I sit on Lily's porch a while longer, the cold December air seeping through my hoodie and numbing my fingers. The sky's a heavy gray, clouds sagging low over the town, and the streetlights flicker on early, casting a dull glow across the wet pavement. My breath puffs out in little clouds, and I pull my knees to my chest, trying to make sense of the tangle in my head. Mom cheated on my dad, my real dad Michael, who wanted me. Jacob's a sinking ship, dragging everyone down with him. Sasha's past is a ticking bomb, and I'm the one holding a match that could set it all ablaze. The power feels good, sharp, and dangerous, but it's heavy too, like a stone lodged in my chest. I don't know if I'm ready to light that fire, not yet. My phone buzzes again, another missed call from Mom, no voicemail this time. I stare at the screen, my thumb hovering over her name, but I shove it back in my pocket. She doesn't get to play nice now, not after everything. Inside, the house is warm and loud. Lily's singing off key to some pop song on the radio, flipping grilled cheese sandwiches in the kitchen, while Ryan sprawls on the couch, tinkering with a busted car part he brought home from the garage. His hands are smudged with grease, his brow furrowed in concentration, and I watch him for a second, the familiar ache stirring in my chest. He looks up, catching my eye, and sets the part down. You're quiet, he says, his voice low over Lily's warbling. I shrug, dropping onto the couch beside him, the cushions sagging under me. Just thinking. My grandparents, they told me Mom cheated on my dad with Jacob, my real dad, Michael. He died when I was a baby. Ryan's face softens, a flicker of surprise in his hazel eyes. Shit, Emily. I'm sorry. I nod, picking at a loose thread on my jeans. They say the house is theirs. I could make them lose it. He leans back, studying me. You want to? I hesitate, the question hanging between us. Part of me does, but it's a lot. He nods, understanding, and doesn't push. Whatever you decide, I've got you, he says, and the steadiness in his voice pulls me in, like a tether keeping me from drifting too far. Lily bounces over, a plate of sandwiches in hand, her curls bouncing with her. Food's up. And Emily, you look like you need it. Spill the tea. What's with the grandparents? I take a sandwich, the warmth seeping into my cold hands, and fill her in. Tom and Grace, Mom's lies, the house. Her eyes go wide, her mouth full of cheese. You could kick them out? Like for real? That's some next-level revenge. She grins, but there's a flicker of worry in her expression, too. Just be careful, okay? Jacob's a jerk and Sasha's sneaky. I nod, chewing slowly, the food settling my stomach but not my nerves. Ryan chimes in, his tone darker. She's right. If Jacob's in with Miller's crew, he's desperate. Desperate guys do dumb shit. I swallow hard, the reality sinking in. They're not just a messed up family, they're a cornered one. The next day, I'm back at Joe's, the lunch rush in full swing. The diner's packed with truckers and locals, the air thick with the smell of fries and burnt coffee. I'm juggling trays, my sneakers sticking to the floor where someone spilled soda, when the door jingles and Jake Morris walks in. He's in his usual grease-stained jacket, his buzz cut catching the light, and he flashes that chip-tooth grin as he slides into a booth. Hey, trouble, he calls, waving me over. I roll my eyes but head his way, wiping my hands on my apron. What's up, Jake? I ask, and he leans back, cracking his knuckles. Heard some chatter at the garage. Your stepdad's name came up. Owes Tony Miller big. 50, maybe 60 grand. They're pissed. My stomach flips, Mrs. Brooks's warning echoing. How pissed? I ask, keeping my voice low. He shrugs, but his eyes are serious. Enough to send a message soon. Keep your distance, kid. I nod, my pulse racing, and he orders a burger, switching to small talk like he didn't just drop a bomb. I scribble his order and head to the kitchen, my hands trembling as I pass it to Joe. Jacob's not just in debt, he's in danger, and that danger's creeping closer to me. That evening, I'm walking home from the diner, the streets slick with rain, when a car slows beside me. A beat-up sedan, windows tinted dark. My heart jumps, and I pick up my pace, clutching my bag tighter. The window rolls down, and a guy leans out, tall, even sitting, with a shaved head and a snake tattoo curling up his neck. "You Emily Harper?" he asks, his voice flat but edged with something hard. I freeze, my breath catching. "Who's asking?" I snap, trying to sound tougher than I feel. He smirks, his eyes cold. "Friend of Jacob's. Tell him Tony's done waiting. Clock's ticking." Before I can respond, he peels off, tires squealing, leaving me shaking on the sidewalk. My legs feel like jelly, but I stumble the rest of the way to Lily's, my mind racing. Miller's crew knows me. They're watching. I burst through the door, soaked and panting, and Lily's there, her face paling. "What happened?" she gasps, pulling me inside. I tell her about the car, the guy, and she grabs my hands, her grip tight. "You're staying here. No arguments." Ryan's in the garage, but he comes running when Lily yells, his face darkening as I repeat the story. "Shit," he mutters, pacing. "They're closing in. You need to tell your grandparents, now." I call Tom and Grace from the living room, my voice shaky as I explain, the debt, the car, the threat. Tom's face on the screen turns to stone, his voice sharp. "We're coming down there. Tomorrow. This ends." Grace nods, her eyes red but determined. "We won't let them hurt you, Emily." I hang up, my head spinning, and Ryan sits beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "You okay?" he asks, and I shake my head, tears welling up. "No, but I will be. I will." He pulls me into a hug, his arms solid around me, and I let myself lean into him, the fear easing just a little. Lily watches, her expression soft, and I know I'm not alone in this. Not anymore. The next morning, Tom and Grace arrive, pulling up in a silver SUV that looks out of place on Lily's modest street. I meet them outside, my stomach in knots, and they step out. Tom tall and broad, Grace smaller but fierce, both in coats that scream money Mom never had. They hug me, and it's awkward at first, my arms stiff, but Grace's warmth melts me, and Tom's firm grip steadies me. "We've got a lawyer," Tom says as we head inside, his voice all business. "The house is ours, deeds in our name. We can start eviction today if you want." I swallow hard, the weight of it crashing down. Lily's parents, Mark and Diane, join us, offering coffee and quiet support, while Ryan hovers nearby, his presence a comfort I cling to. "Jacob's in debt," I say, my voice trembling. "Dangerous people. They found me last night." Grace gasps, her hand flying to her mouth, and Tom's eyes narrow. "Then it's settled. They're out." I nod, my resolve hardening. I want them gone, but the fear lingers, a shadow I can't shake. That afternoon, Tom makes calls, his voice booming through the house as he talks to lawyers and cops. Grace sits with me, her hand on mine, telling me stories. Mom as a kid, Michael, the life I never knew. "He was kind," she says, her eyes misty. "Wanted you so bad. Jacob took that from us." Her words fill a hole I didn't know was there, and I cry, quiet and cathartic. But the peace doesn't last. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. "Tell your old man to back off, or you're next." My blood runs cold, and I show Ryan, his face paling. "Miller," he mutters, and we tell Tom, who grabs his phone again, barking orders. "We're not backing down," he says, his eyes blazing, and I feel a surge of something, pride maybe, or strength I didn't know I had. By night, the plan's in motion, eviction papers filed, cops alerted to Miller's crew. I'm exhausted, curled up on Lily's couch, my body sinking into the worn cushions like I could disappear into them. The living room is dim, just the soft glow of a lamp in the corner and the flicker of the TV, muted now, showing some late-night infomercial no one's watching. My legs are tucked under me, a quilt draped over my lap, but I'm still cold, the chill of the day seeping into my bones. Ryan sits beside me, his weight shifting the couch, and his hand rests on my knee, warm and steady through my jeans. "You're badass, you know that?" he says, a small smile tugging at his lips, his voice low and rough from a long day. I laugh, weak but real, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep, surprising me. I lean into him, my shoulder pressing against his warmth chasing the cold away like a fire I didn't know I needed. "Thanks for sticking around," I whisper, my voice barely audible over the patter of rain outside. He nods, his hazel eyes locked on mine, steady and sure, and says, "Always." The word hangs there, simple but heavy, and I feel it settle into me, a promise I want to believe. Outside, the rain keeps falling, drumming against the windows, but inside I feel a shift, like I'm finally taking back what's mine, piece by jagged piece. Lily's in the kitchen, clattering dishes as she cleans up from dinner, her voice drifting in as she hums a tune I don't recognize. Mark and Diane went to bed an hour ago, leaving us in this quiet bubble, and I'm grateful for the space. My phone sits on the coffee table, screen dark, but I can still feel the weight of that text. "Tell your old man to back off, or you're next." It's been looping in my head all day, a thread I can't unsee, and my stomach twists every time I think about it. Ryan notices, his hand squeezing my knee lightly. "You're still freaked out," he says, not a question. I nod, biting my lip. "That guy in the car, he knew my name, Ryan. They're watching me." My voice cracks, fear spilling out despite my effort to keep it locked down. He shifts closer, his arm sliding around my shoulders, pulling me in. "They won't touch you," he says, his tone fierce. "Not while I'm around. And your grandparents, they're not messing around either." I nod, resting my head against his chest, the steady thud of his heartbeat calming me. But the fear's still there, a shadow lurking just out of reach. The next morning I wake to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices. Tom and Grace are back, sitting at Lily's kitchen table with Mark and Diane. I stumble in, my hair a mess, still in yesterday's hoodie, and Grace smiles, her silver hair catching the light. "Morning, honey," she says, pushing a mug toward me. Tom's on the phone, his voice clipped as he talks to someone, probably the lawyer, his stern jaw set tight. "Papers are served today," he says when he hangs up, looking at me. "They've got 30 days to get out, but with Miller's crew sniffing around, we're pushing for faster. Cops are on it." I sip the coffee, the bitterness grounding me, and nod. "What if they fight it?" I ask, my voice small. Tom's eyes harden. "They can try, but the deed's ours. Jacob's got no leg to stand on." Grace reaches for my hand, her grip warm and firm. "We're here now, Emily. You don't have to face this alone." Her words hit me, soft and deep, and I squeeze her hand back, a lump in my throat. For the first time I feel like I have a family, real family, not the twisted mess I grew up with. But the calm doesn't last. I'm at Joe's diner for the afternoon shift, wiping down counters, when the door jingles and Sasha walks in. My heart stops. She's alone, no baby, no Jacob, just her in a tight jacket, her blonde hair pulled back, her blue eyes sharp and angry. She spots me and marches over, her heels clicking on the tile. "We need to talk," she snaps, her voice loud enough that a few regulars glance up. I freeze, my rag dripping water onto the counter, and force my voice steady. "What do you want, Sasha?" She crosses her arms, her belly still rounded from pregnancy, and glares. "You're screwing us over. Dad got eviction papers this morning, says it's your grandparents. What the hell, Emily?" My anger flares, hot and sudden, and I step closer, my hands clenched. "You kicked me out," I hiss, keeping my voice low but sharp. "During finals, for your kid. You don't get to play victim now." Her eyes narrow, a smirk tugging at her lips. "You're such a drama queen." "We needed the space. It wasn't personal." I laugh, bitter and loud, and Joe pokes his head out from the kitchen, frowning. "It was personal when Mom called your baby her real grandkid." I shoot back, my chest tight. "You don't care about me, Sasha. Never have." She steps closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You think you're so smart, huh? Getting Grandma and Grandpa to fight your battles? You're gonna regret this. Dad's not letting that house go without a fight." My stomach twists. She knows about Tom and Grace, and the threat in her tone is real. "Get out," I say, pointing to the door, my hand shaking. She smirks again, turning on her heel, but pauses to toss over her shoulder. "This isn't over." The door slams behind her, and I lean against the counter, my legs wobbly. Joe comes over, his scowl softening. "You okay, kid?" he asks, and I nod, but I'm not. Sasha's words echo, and I know she's right about one thing. Jacob won't go quietly. I call Ryan from the break room, my voice trembling as I tell him about Sasha. "She's pissed," I say, pacing the tiny space. "Said Jacob's gonna fight it." He's quiet for a second, then says, I'm coming to get you after your shift. You're not walking home alone, not with Miller's guys and now this. I don't argue, too rattled to care about pride. When he pulls up in his truck, the rain stopped, but the air's still heavy, damp and cold. I climb in, the cab smelling of oil and leather, and he glances at me, his jaw tight. Jake heard more at the garage, he says as he drives. Miller's crew roughed up some guy last night, owed less than Jacob. They're closing in. My stomach drops, fear clawing at me. They threatened me yesterday, I admit, my voice small. Texted me to back off. He grips the wheel harder, his knuckles white. Shit, Emily, why didn't you say something? I shrug, tears stinging my eyes. Didn't want to drag you deeper. He pulls over, turning to me, his hand on my shoulder. I'm in this. You don't get to push me out. His eyes are fierce, and I nod, the tears spilling over. He pulls me into a hug, his arms tight, and I let myself break just for a moment. Back at Lily's, Tom and Grace are still there, talking strategy with Mark and Diane. I tell them about Sasha, the threat, and Tom's face darkens. We're moving faster, he says, dialing his lawyer again. Cops need to step up too. Grace pulls me aside, her hands on my face. You're so strong, Emily. Michael would be proud. Her words crack me open, and I hug her, sobbing into her shoulder. But the peace shatters when my phone buzzes, a photo this time from that unknown number. It's me, walking out of Joe's, snapped from across the street. No message, just the image, and my blood runs cold. I show Ryan, and he curses, grabbing his keys. We're going to the cops, now. Tom nods, his voice grim. This ends tonight. We pile into Tom's SUV, me, Ryan, Tom, and Grace, and head to the station. The photo's enough to get the cops moving, a tired officer named Harris taking my statement, his pen scratching as I spill everything. Miller's crew, Jacob's debt, the threats. We'll pick him up, Harris says, his voice flat but firm. And Miller's boys, we've been watching them. Relief floods me, but it's shaky, fragile. As we leave, Ryan's hand finds mine, his grip tight, and I cling to it, my anchor in the storm. That night, I can't sleep. Curled up in Lily's spare room, the quilt pulled to my chin. The house is quiet, but my mind's loud. Sasha's smirk, that photo, Jacob's shadow looming over it all. Ryan's on the couch downstairs, insisting on staying close, and I'm glad he's here. My phone buzzes again, and I flinch, but it's Tom. Cops got Jacob, Miller's crew too. You're safe. My breath catches, tears of relief spilling over. I text back, thank you, and collapse into the pillows, exhaustion pulling me under. Outside, the rain stopped, and for the first time in weeks, I feel the weight lifting, just a little. The text from Tom. Cops got Jacob. Miller's crew too. You're safe. Sits heavy on my chest as I lie there in Lily's spare room, the quilt tangled around my legs. My phone glows faintly on the nightstand, the words blurring as tears of relief spill over, hot and silent down my cheeks. I clutch the pillow, my body shaking with sobs I can't hold back anymore. Not from fear this time, but from the sudden release of it all. The rain stopped outside, the silence almost eerie after days of its constant drumming, and the house feels still, like it's holding its breath with me. I want to believe Tom, want to feel safe, but there's a nagging ache in my gut, a whisper that this isn't over, not completely. Jacob's gone for now, locked up somewhere, and Miller's crew might be off the streets, but Sasha's out there, Mom's out there, and the mess they've made is still mine to untangle. I wipe my eyes, my breath steadying, and text Tom back, thank you, my fingers trembling as I hit send. Exhaustion pulls at me, a deep bone-weary tiredness, and I let it take me, sinking into the lumpy mattress as sleep finally drags me under. Morning comes too fast, gray light filtering through the curtains, and I wake to the sound of voices downstairs. Lily's laugh, Grace's soft murmur, the clink of coffee mugs. My head throbs, my eyes gritty from crying, but I drag myself out of bed, pulling on a hoodie over my rumpled clothes. The stairs creak under my feet as I head down, and the kitchen's a warm chaos. Lily flipping pancakes, Grace stirring sugar into her coffee, Tom hunched over a newspaper at the table. Ryan's there too, leaning against the counter, his hair still messy from sleeping on the couch, his hazel eyes flicking to me as I walk in. "Morning, hero," Lily chirps, sliding a plate my way, and I manage a small smile, the normalcy of it grounding me. Grace stands, pulling me into a hug, her arms thin but strong, and whispers, You did it, honey. I nod against her shoulder, the lump in my throat back, and Tom looks up, his stern face softening. Jacob's in custody, he says, folding the paper. Assault, debt fraud, cops nabbed 2 of Miller's guys too. They're done. I sink into a chair, the weight of his words settling in, and Ryan nudges my arm with a mug of coffee. Told you you're badass, he says, his voice low, and I laugh, shaky but real. But the relief's fragile, a thin thread stretched tight. I'm sipping coffee, the warmth spreading through me, when my phone buzzes again. This time it's Mom, a voicemail. My stomach twists and I hesitate, my thumb hovering over the play button. Ryan notices, his brow furrowing. You don't have to listen, he says, but I shake my head, needing to know. I hit play, holding the phone to my ear, and her voice crackles through, sharp and desperate. Emily, it's me. Jacob's gone. They took him last night. Sasha's a mess and we've got nowhere to go. You can't do this to us. Call me back, please. The plea in her tone cuts me, guilt clawing at my chest, but then I remember her words, real grandkids, and the guilt hardens into something colder. I delete the message, my hands steady now, and look up at Tom. What happens to them now? I ask, my voice quiet. He leans back, his eyes steady. They've got 30 days, but without Jacob, they'll scramble. Sasha's got Derek. Maybe they'll figure something out. It's not your burden, Emily. I nod, but the ache lingers. Mom's voice, Sasha's smirk, years of feeling like I didn't belong. That afternoon, I'm back at Joe's, the diner quieter now, just a few regulars nursing coffee at the counter. Joe gives me a rare grin as I tie on my apron. Heard the news? Your stepdad's toast? Good riddance. I nod, forcing a smile, and start wiping tables, the routine calming me. But the door jingles, and Derek walks in, his lanky frame hunched, his scruffy beard patchy with stress. He looks wrecked, dark circles under his eyes, and slides into a booth, waving me over. Emily, he says, his voice low and rough. I need to talk. I sit across from him, my guard up. What now? I ask, and he rubs his face, his hands shaking. Sasha's losing it. She's blaming you for everything. Says you ruined her life. And there's something else. He pauses, glancing around, then leans in. That kid she gave up? The father's in town. Tall guy, tattoos. Been asking about her at the bar. I think he knows about the baby now. My heart skips, Mrs. Brooks's warning flashing back. He's looking for her? I ask, and Derek nods, miserable. Yeah, and he's pissed. Sasha's scared. He might come after us next. I lean back, my mind racing. This is the bomb Mrs. Brooks hinted at, and it's ticking louder now. I tell Ryan later, back at Lily's as we sit on the porch, the air crisp and damp from last night's rain. He's whittling a stick with his pocket knife, the shavings piling up at his feet, and his jaw tightens as I talk. This guy, what's his name? He asks, and I shrug. Derek didn't say, just that he's trouble. Ryan sets the knife down, his eyes dark. If he's after Sasha, he might sniff around you too. We need to watch it. I nod, unease curling in my gut, and he reaches for my hand, his fingers rough but gentle. We'll handle it, he says, and I squeeze back, the contact steadying me. Lily pokes her head out, her curls bouncing. You two brooding out here? Come in, Grace made cookies. I laugh, the tension easing, and follow them inside, the smell of chocolate pulling me back to something simple, something good. Days blur into weeks, December fading into January 2025, and I'm still at Lily's, my life a strange mix of normal and chaos. Jacob's locked up, facing charges that'll keep him gone a while, assault, fraud, ties to Miller's crew. The house is empty now. Sasha and Mom moved out fast, crashing with Derek's cousin in a cramped trailer across town, according to Mrs. Brooks, who keeps me updated with her usual glee. Tom and Grace are staying local, renting a place nearby while they sort the house, and they're talking about selling it, giving me the money for college. It's yours, Tom says one day over lunch at Joe's, his voice firm. Michael would have wanted that. I nod, tears pricking my eyes, and Grace hugs me, her warmth a balm I'm still getting used to. But the past won't stay buried. I'm at the diner one snowy afternoon, the windows fogged up, when a stranger walks in, tall, broad, with a shaved head and a snake tattoo curling up his neck. My heart stops. It's the guy from the car, the one who threatened me for Miller. He's not in cuffs, not locked up, and he slides into a booth, his cold eyes locking on mine. "Coffee," he grunts, and I pour it, my hands shaking, spilling a little on the table. "You're Jacob's kid, right?" he says, his voice flat, and I shake my head, my throat dry. "Stepkid, he's gone." He smirks, sipping the coffee. "Not my problem anymore. But your sister, Sasha? Someone's asking about her. Big guy, tattoos. Thought you should know." He tosses a crumpled bill on the table and leaves, the door slamming behind him. I stand there frozen, my pulse pounding. Miller's guy is free, and Sasha's mystery dad is closing in. I call Tom from the break room, my voice trembling as I tell him everything. The guy, the warning. "We're on it," he says, his tone sharp. "Cops missed one. I'll handle it." Ryan picks me up after, his truck idling outside, and I climb in, my breath fogging the air. "This isn't over," I say, my voice small, and he nods, his hand finding mine. "We'll face it together," he says, and I lean into him, the road ahead blurry with snow and uncertainty. Back at Lily's, Grace is waiting, her face pale but determined. "We're family now," she says, pulling me close, and I nod, holding on tight. Outside, the snow keeps falling, soft and relentless, and I know the storm's not done with me yet, but for the first time I'm not facing it alone. The snow keeps falling outside Lily's window, a soft, relentless blanket over the town, and I sit there in the kitchen, my hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Grace made me. It's late January 2025 now, a few weeks since Jacob got hauled off and the house emptied out, and I'm still trying to piece myself together. The steam rises from the mug, curling in the dim light, and I stare at it, my mind drifting. Ryan's at the table with me, flipping through a car magazine, his presence quiet but solid, while Lily's upstairs, her laughter drifting down as she talks on the phone with some friend from school. Tom and Grace left an hour ago, back to their rental, promising to check in tomorrow. They've been my rock, but there's a restlessness in me I can't shake. Jacob's gone, Sasha and Mom are scrambling, but that tattooed guy from Miller's crew, the one who walked into Joe's, he's still out there. And Derek's warning about Sasha's baby daddy, it's a loose thread tugging at me, promising more chaos I don't know if I can handle. My phone buzzes, snapping me out of it, and I glance at the screen. An unknown number again. My stomach twists, but I pick it up, my voice tight. "Hello?" There's a pause, then a deep, gravelly voice I don't recognize. "You Emily Harper?" My heart skips, and Ryan looks up, his magazine forgotten. "Who's this?" I ask, my tone sharp. "Name's Caleb," he says, slow and deliberate. "I'm looking for Sasha Miller. Heard you're her sister." I freeze, my breath catching. Sasha's baby daddy, the one Derek and Mrs. Brooks warned about. "Half-sister," I correct, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. "She's not here. I don't know where she is." He chuckles, low and dark. "Funny. People say you're the one who tanked her life, kicked her out, got her old man locked up. I just want what's mine, kid. She took my boy, gave him up without a word. You see her, you tell her I'm coming." The line goes dead, and I drop the phone, my hands shaking. Ryan's on his feet, his face hard. "Who was that?" he demands, and I tell him, the words tumbling out. Caleb, Sasha's secret, the threat. He curses, pacing, then grabs his jacket. "We're telling Tom, now." We call Tom from the living room, my voice trembling as I relay the conversation. He's silent for a beat, then says, "Stay put. I'll get Harris on it. Description, anything you've got." I describe Caleb, tall, tattoos, deep voice, and Tom hangs up, his tone clipped. Ryan sits beside me, his arm around my shoulders, and I lean into him, my head spinning. "He's after Sasha," I whisper. "But what if he comes for me?" Ryan's grip tightens, his voice fierce. "He won't get near you, I swear." I nod, wanting to believe him, but the fear's back, a cold knot I can't untie. Lily comes down, her smile fading when she sees us. "What's wrong?" she asks, and I fill her in, her eyes widening. "This is insane," she mutters, flopping onto the couch. "Your family's a damn soap opera." I laugh, a brittle sound, and she squeezes my hand, her warmth a lifeline. The next day, I'm at Joe's, the lunch shift dragging, when Mrs. Brooks shuffles in, her gray eyes glinting with that gossip-hungry spark. She slides into a booth, waving me over, and I brace myself. "Heard Jacob's locked up tight," she says, sipping her coffee. But Sasha's in a mess, shacked up with Derek in some trailer, screaming matches every night. And word is, a guy's been asking around, tattooed fella, mean look. That her kid's dad? I nod, my stomach churning, and she smirks. Thought so. He's trouble, Emily. Saw him at the bar last night. Big guy, snake ink on his neck. Asking about you too. My blood runs cold. He's got the same tattoo as Miller's guy. Me? I choke out, and she nods, satisfied. Yep. Said something about settling scores. Watch your back, girl. She pats my arm and leaves, her words a weight I can't shake. I call Ryan from the break room, my voice shaky. Caleb's got Miller's tattoo. He's tied to them. He's after me too. Ryan's there in 10 minutes, his truck screeching into the lot, and he storms in, his face pale. We're done waiting, he says, grabbing my hand. Cops now. At the station, Harris takes my statement again, his pen scratching as I spill it. Caleb's call, Mrs. Brooks's sighting, the tattoo link. Miller's crew's splintered, he says, leaning back. One got away. Could be this Caleb. We'll track him. I nod, my hands clenched, and Ryan's beside me, his presence a shield. Tom and Grace meet us outside, their faces grim. We're selling the house, Tom says, his voice firm. Money's yours. College, a fresh start. We're done with this town. I swallow hard, the idea of leaving bittersweet, but I nod, ready to cut the cord. Grace hugs me, her eyes wet. You're our girl now, she whispers, and I cling to her, my anchor in the wreckage. Weeks turn into months, and by March 2025, I'm starting over. Classes at a community college an hour away, a scholarship covering most of it, the rest from Tom's sale of the house. I've got a tiny apartment near campus, shared with Lily, who insisted on coming along, and Ryan visits weekends, his truck a familiar sight in the lot. Jacob's still locked up, his trial dragging on. Assault, fraud, ties to Miller's busted crew. Sasha and Mom are ghosts now, whispers from Mrs. Brooks saying they're scraping by, Derek gone, Caleb's shadow haunting them. I don't know if he found her, if he got his answers, and part of me doesn't care. They're reaping what they sowed, a bitter harvest of lies and betrayal. The last I heard, Sasha was spotted at a gas station, her face hollow, yelling at Mom over a busted tire, while Caleb's name floated around, a threat unfulfilled but looming. Their world's crumbling, and I'm not there to pick up the pieces. It's a warm May evening when I'm on my balcony, the sun dipping low, painting the sky orange. Ryan's beside me, a beer in his hand, his arm around my shoulders. Lily's inside, blasting music, her laughter spilling out, and I lean into Ryan, his warmth a steady hum against me. My phone buzzes, a text from an unknown number, just one word. Watch. My heart skips, but I delete it, my hands steady. Caleb, Miller, Jacob, whoever it is, they're echoes now, fading in the distance. I've got my family, Ryan, Lily, Tom, Grace, and that's enough. You okay? Ryan asks, his voice soft, and I nod, a real smile tugging at my lips. Yeah, I'm free. He kisses my forehead and I close my eyes, the past a shadow I've outrun. The lesson here's simple but brutal. Family isn't blood. It's who stands by you when the knives come out. I lost the one I was born into, watched it rot under greed and lies, but I built a new one, stronger, truer. Sasha and Mom, they're drowning in their own mess. Caleb a specter they can't escape, and Jacob's caged, his empire of debt and rage reduced to a jail cell. Me? I'm standing tall, not because I won, but because I walked away. So here's my question to you. What would you do if the people who should have loved you turned their backs? Would you fight, run, or rise? Drop your thoughts below. I've shared my story, now let's hear yours.